I'm Mike.
I'm Jason.
This is Snake Envy. Any updates on pairings, and you had any successes yet that you know of for sure?
I have not had any confirmed locks. I've seen them trying. I've heard a lot of racket in here, like thrashing around. No, I did have a lot of activity this week. So
Good
lots
deal.
of milks, bowls, kings, that type of stuff.
Excellent. Maybe we'll take a peek here in a bit, see if we can see a lock. You don't always get to see them. You just have to trust to some degree.
I don't see a lot because I don't hang out here.
Right.
Like I mean, sometimes I get to hang out a little bit, but like
if this were your home, you would see more.
yeah, I do my work and I get out of here. Like so once in a while, I'll hang out for a minute.
You just have to trust, but it all works out.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you wanted to talk a little bit about feeding this week. What specifically is on your mind?
Well, just like feeding schedules, like it's a known thing. Like everybody's weekly. You hear people that power feed and do twice a week sometimes.
This is a great topic for beginners, by the way.
Yeah, that's kind of why.
I see so much conversation about how often, and all these breeders jump into the conversation and they're feeding like Neos twice a week.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do that.
No, I don't. I feed once a week, and frankly, like last week, there's some snakes that are looking a little thick that are not breeders, and they got skipped. Even females, like I need them to be large enough to breed next year. Sometimes you just need. I'll like if I go on a trip, I won't feed that week. There's probably, I'm guessing just between vacations and trips and this and that. Like I bet I like in a regular season, I probably skip. I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks a year.
Yeah, and then you're going to have some snakes that are just going to take random weeks off. We don't know why.
Yeah,
Sometimes we know why when it's seasonal or breeding, related to breeding, but males in the spring, we've talked about that. But we don't always know why. They just decide not to eat 1 week, and we assume they know best. And usually they pick up the next week, but not always. That's interesting when you say going into a vacation you don't feed, because otherwise you're just going to have, they're all going to be pooping. And
it's a mess.
And you're still going to be gone.
It's gone. I don't want the mess while I'm gone.
That's smart. Don't have them, carrying on in their own feces while you're away.
Yeah.
And obviously the smell is going to be that much worse when you come back. That's smart. I had, in addition to beginners always asking about how often to feed, and you and I agree, weekly is plenty.
Weekly's good.
Weekly's good, and it gets you into a routine. I actually notice, being a hobbyist, you actually have greater opportunity to kind of pick up on some things that somebody who has 600-700 snakes may not notice. But I see my snakes cruising, in the day leading up to feeding day. And there's a few snakes in my collection, like my big Janai in particular. He's a hider. My Kankakee bull is very active throughout the week. It's not really tied to feeding, but that Janai, if I walk into my snake room, I would always bet you that he's going to be in a hide. And I would bet you that the Kankakee is going to be out. I would bet you that my California King is going to be out. They're just more active in general. But my Janai, he's a hider. He's typically in his hide, except the day before feeding day, he's out cruising. He's out looking. And then on feeding day, he'll be out again. They pick up on that schedule, and they have a sense for when feeding day's coming around. And if you're feeding twice a week, I don't know. I don't know if they're as likely to kind of establish those routines. I also give them time to poop and give them time to digest a meal before you're throwing another one on board.
Exactly. Like people like, oh, I need to get this thing up to size. And it's like, personally, this is me. Personally, I don't think it's healthy to have their digestive tract constantly full of food. I think it's healthy to have it emptied out. They don't, I mean, you know, in the wild, they're opportunists. And yes, they will eat a meal while they have meal in them, probably.
Yes.
But then a lot of times they might go 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they don't know when the next meal's coming. They'll empty a rodent nest if they come upon one, or a bird nest, or they'll gorge themselves, but they know they might not eat for another month.
So if you're a field herper, how often do you see obese snakes? Like, I see healthy snakes. I don't ever, rarely do I ever see obese. I see obese in collections. I see it in the hobby, yeah.
Yes.
But I don't see it in the wild.
Yeah. And partly that's they don't get as much exercise as they would in the wild. They don't cover as much ground.
Right.
And it's because, if anything, we're overfeeding them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I agree with you 100% on Neos. I've talked too about, I think cold-blooded animals kind of, you know, energy conservation is important to them. They have to warm up in order to have energy. If you're just constantly keeping them warm for the first year of their life in order to digest meal after meal after meal, I don't think that's healthy. I think they appreciate being able to have their metabolism kind of come and go. And just digestion-wise, I don't know how it can be healthy either, but no, so I think we're on board. I agree completely. Weekly is plenty. And you know what? I tell people all the time, if you have a snake that is taking breaks or that isn't maybe a little finicky, there's nothing wrong with feeding a snake every other week.
For sure. I know a few people that do that, like with their collection. They just feed 10 to 14 days. That's their schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, this is more for beginners. This video is, and it's just like, don't freak out when your snake misses a meal. Like, just once here and there, you might, like, if it's been a few months, then get concerned. But like, I have snakes that will go off feed for months at a time, and I had it during the winter. Stuff I was raising up, and maybe I should have cooled them, but they didn't eat all winter.
Yeah,
and they were up,
and they were fine.
They're, even though they are awake, their body weight's just fine.
Yeah.
So,
the other thing that I think is important to touch on a little bit is things like scenting or even trying a variety of prey. When you have 700 snakes, trying to keep track of who'll eat what, I mean, one of the great things about having a smaller collection is that it's much easier to work in varied diets. It's much easier to keep track of who ate this and who didn't eat that and who prefers this to that. But one thing I would say to beginners too, there is no rule that your snakes have to eat rodents and that they have to eat rodents week after week after week after week. There are individuals out there, if you have a snake that's just repeatedly refusing meals or repeatedly, try something else. We're gonna show you a little B-roll of a day-old quail chick next to a hopper or a small mouse. They're very small. You can be feeding them to anybody that eats hoppers and above. Try one. You know, most pet stores out there sell a variety of frozen prey. All the big rodent mills and the places we buy from online, they all sell poultry now. Next time you're buying prey, you know, day-old quail are a good thing to have on hand. And just see. I have individual snakes. Visually, I know that their excitement level is much greater for chicks. It just is.
It's a different smell. It's a different trigger.
I don't know what it is. There are some individual snakes out there that chicks are just candy. And they will absolutely eat chicks when they won't eat rodents. And there's no harm in trying something else and seeing what happens. And I do hear people from time to time say things like, well, that species would never, you know, encounter that in the wild, there's no way that they would eat one, and they do. And number one, captivity is not the wild. And number two, just because they don't encounter them in the wild doesn't mean they wouldn't enjoy them if they did. And so, to some degree, food is food.
Yeah. And snakes are predators. And
Yeah.
but you know, they're going to scavenge something out the road. Well, you know, they'll scavenge stuff.
They will.
They will. The car hits a mouse, like they'll eat it. Like,
Yeah.
even if it's rotty, you know, a day old, they'll get it. Like, and there's this, you know, we probably really don't know, like, especially these. I'm just thinking of like red milk, like milk snakes back east or something. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, these baby snakes can be eating some type of insect. Like,
They could.
most likely they are at some level.
And they're so tiny when they're born
Yeah.
that it makes sense that they would. That maybe they would eat an earthworm, or maybe they would eat a cricket, or baby copperheads are known when the cicadas when the cicadas are out. The baby copperheads and the baby water moccasins, the baby vipers, they go crazy for the cicada. And the cicada are every bit as big as,
Yeah.
like a hopper mouse. They're the right size. They're obviously loaded with protein. So it makes sense. Garter snakes are known for eating snails and slugs. So, you know, there's no harm in trying something. If you have one of those snakes that just doesn't seem enthusiastic about what you're feeding, and you're confident that husbandry-wise everything you're on track, go buy a day-old quail chick. I have great success with chicks, and most everybody in my collection eats them. I currently have a couple of subadult African house snakes that won't eat chicks yet, but I'm pretty confident they will. And I have a western green rat snake that was wild caught. He is yet to eat a chick when I've offered.
Interesting.
But I'm confident he will too. I mean, rat snakes are pretty opportunistic eaters.
Yeah.
I doubt he's radically different than other rats. So
I mean,
I think he'll take one at some point.
you know, there's some exceptions to what we're talking about too.
Yeah.
Like garter snakes have a higher metabolism.
Yes.
There is certain snakes that prey on certain things, like a leaf nose. Like they eat geckos and their eggs or whatever. Like,
Egg eaters.
you know, there's exceptions, but like generally, as far as our hobby goes, you know, once a week is pretty good for most everything.
And metabolism's a great point. Like boas, pythons, some of those snakes, every other week is fine. They have a slower metabolism. My green tree pythons on a 3-meal without pooping rule, their metabolism's slow enough that they don't even necessarily poop after every meal. But if he hits a 3rd meal without pooping, he has to wait. He won't get another meal until he does poop. And that's just to guard against impaction. That's just to make sure everything's going well.
Interesting.
But their metabolism's slow enough, they don't poop necessarily after every meal. Sometimes.
Okay.
But sometimes it takes him a couple,
Yeah.
then he poops. So yeah, metabolism, maybe every other week would make sense. As snakes get older, nothing wrong with backing off on the schedule.
Oh.
And if you have a snake that's getting obese, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, from a breeding standpoint, you've got 2 really important times of the year, going into brumation and then going into breeding. Tell everybody about what you're kind of trying to make sure of those 2 times a year regarding feeding schedules.
So for breeding, you know, you want a snake won't lay eggs unless it's healthy enough. And so you got to get some weight on him. You want to feed him heavily. You might want to feed him. I feed him heavy.
Yeah.
I feed my stuff pretty heavy in the spring. And then, you know, they'll get to that where they're laying eggs. They're going to get to the egg laying area. And then they'll probably miss, you know, a week. You know, sometimes they don't eat the last 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before laying eggs. And so that happens. But then you're going to want to put food back on them after they lay. And, you know, sometimes that will, if you do it too much, you can force them into another clutch of eggs. Or, sometimes if you feed them too heavy before breeding season, like I've had a couple bull snakes do this to me. I fed them real heavy and they went into ovulation before I even put the male in, and so I got infertile.
It kind of sped up the process.
It went too fast, so you can overfeed a little bit. And then obviously, brumation, you want your snake to be, healthy weight going into that time of year.
But you also want to cut off food, a week or two before putting them down, just so they clear out?
2 weeks minimum.
2 weeks?
I like to go like 3.
Okay.
Sometimes
So
a month
3.
even. But
you want to make sure they're cleared out before you're slowing down things. They've got all the poops cleared. Snakes, by the way, can hold poop. Some of them do it for defensive purposes. Usually in captivity, you see that behavior diminish as they get older and they get used to being in captivity. But occasionally you'll get a poop and brumation, and that's okay.
Yeah, one snake.
But you try to avoid that.
Yeah. One snake I wanted to mention that has a really slow metabolism. I think they only eat, 6 months out of the year, are Arizona mountain king snakes. Like, they have the slowest metabolism. Like, they hold body weight really well. Like, pretty neat creatures. Even like learning about the Utah pyros, I'm starting to think these things might take 8 years to get maturity. Like, our winners are
they're just a little slower in
5
developing.
months, and then and then this and that, and this is they might, like, in talking to other people working with them, it's like these snakes grow incredibly slow.
Yeah,
but hold weight really well.
And I have a Utah mountain king snake in my hobbyist collection. We brumated him this year. He's the only snake in my collection that brumated that didn't eat year round. And, they tend to kind of just quit feeding come fall.
They'll stop.
And they won't eat in the winter, so it's best to just brumate him. He did, by the way, eat a couple of quail chicks last week. And I talked to the guy who owned him prior to me. He said, "Hey, did you ever feed him chicks?" Because he took a couple, and he's like, "Nope." So, and this snake, we don't know how old he is for sure because he was wild collected, but he's definitely a mature adult.
Yeah.
He could be 10 years old for all we know.
Yeah.
He's never seen a chick in his life that we know of. He may have in the wild, who knows?
Yeah.
But he ate a quail chick. And our friend was a little surprised by that. He's like, "Well,
I'm not."
But I think most snakes are opportunistic.
Yes, I believe so.
I have noticed a difference between tongue feeders and drop feeders. If a snake is accustomed to being fed off tongues, a lot of them, I don't even think they bother to note what is at the end of the tongues. They just know it's food.
Yeah.
And they're more likely to take. If you can get a new prey item down that first time, they'll take it from that point forward. Drop feeders, different story. If you give them a new prey item, not always. They will very often check it out and then say nope, and they won't touch it. But that pyro, he would not take the chick off tongues. I left it to go feed other snakes. I came back and he had it half down. So he actually took that off a drop feed too. What do we got?
So we got an albino patternless bull snake here. Get close on this neck. Get some of that orange flecking in there. Some of this orange flecking down here on this tail.
Those little spots.
Anyways, just a neat animal.
Now this is an animal that went out to a customer, and then a customer had some life changes, decided to bring it back.
Look at this orange and pink coloring in here in these scales.
So you've got it again.
Yep, came back home.
And what's interesting is you sold it as a female, but you're looking at him now thinking maybe it's a male. You're going to probe to be sure.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll probe it next week and show people how to do that.
Yep.
But
missexing snakes happens. It
does.
I would advise anytime you buy a snake, if you're capable of sexing an animal, do it. You don't know how many times I bought snakes and just trusted people. I raised these things up for 4 years, 3 years, and then put them together, and I got 2 females or 2 males, and they're combating, and like that's a lot of time and then money and investment. Just it happens to the best of us. Even the best breeders can missex a snake. So just do your homework.
We'll confirm it on this one next week.
Yep, we'll do it. Weird stuff that I've seen as a breeder, like in the hobby, as far as feeding goes. Like, I'll have snakes that will eat anything dropped or tongue fed. They'll just eat.
Yeah.
And then I have some that have to be tongue fed.
Yes.
They just they're like that all their life. It's weird.
They're like us. They have their preferences. They have their habits. They get used to routines.
But have you heard of this? Like, I've heard of this topic plenty of times, where my snake only eats female mice or black mice. Like,
yes,
that is weird stuff. Like,
I have experienced it. So the food supplier I used for years, I always got white lab mice and rats, always. It was very rare to get anything that wasn't white. And then, yes, the first time I got ones that had any color to them, that were gray or that were black or that were spotted, there was always a couple snakes. Even if eventually they would take them, but initially they wanted nothing to do with them. The other thing that's interesting is introduce a new prey item to a snake, like a chick. Okay, so now you're talking feathers instead of fur. They will very often rub themselves against a new prey item, just trying to figure out, what is this?
yeah, I've seen them circle it. And
Yeah, and so they do know, if they do notice the difference, if they give them a chance, other than those tongue feeders that just pounce, they do. And they can get habituated to color. They can get habituated to a lot of things. So it's interesting. And yeah, I'm betting males and females may smell a little different.
yeah.
Okay, so question for you.
Okay.
Who is more stressed when a snake is not eating? The snake or the keeper?
I think the keeper.
I'm very confident it's the keeper.
It's the keeper.
I think the snake is just fine.
Like I said, I have snakes that went off feed for 3 months.
Yeah.
Like, I just quit even. Like, this is one thing I do. When I have a snake that quits feeding, and then I'll offer it and I'll offer it, and so I quit offering it.
Yes.
And the thing is, especially with hatchlings, like stubborn feeders like gray bands or mountain kings or something like that, I think it is a problem when you put, I think this can be an issue. Every week you're introducing a prey item, it doesn't want it.
Yes.
I think the longer you go with a drought of no food, the better response you're going to get.
Yes.
So this guy over here, this bull snake over here, hasn't ate for 3 weeks. Like, I'll let him go 3 or 4 weeks, and then I'll once in a while I'll offer, and I feel like if I don't offer every week, they're going to be more likely to snatch that thing up.
Yes, 100%. There's 2 pieces of advice I always give beginners on this issue, and that's if your snake didn't eat 1 week, I always say, number 1, wait at least until your next feeding day.
Yes.
Don't offer daily. Number 1,
I think skip a week.
That's just what I was getting to. It's even better to skip the next week and give it 2 full weeks. And so now it's the 3rd week that you're trying again. There's a very good chance that the snake was going to take those 2 weeks off anyway. Sometimes they take a week off. Maybe there's a shed coming and you just haven't quite seen the signs yet. Sometimes that's a good, example of a 1 week off. But usually if they take 1 week off, they take another. And they may even take 3. So I always just say, you're going to be less stressed because you're not going to be trying and be disappointed. Your snake doesn't care whether it's this week or 2 weeks from now. Trust me, it doesn't. It's going to be just fine. And lastly, you're just going to waste less prey.
Yeah.
But do not offer the prey daily.
No, that's where the snake is getting stressed.
Yes.
You're stressed too.
Yes.
You're stressed. Oh my God, my investment, my poor pet, like you're stressed. But the snake, when there's a prey item in there, that can stress them out, especially like on newborns where they're stubborn feeders, like gray bands. I really won't even offer a first meal till like maybe 6 weeks out from hatching.
Let them get hungry.
But
let them
then
digest the egg.
Then I'll try again, and then like I'll try when I try, and then the ones that don't eat, I don't try the next week. I'll usually wait another couple weeks. Or if I do try, it's a total different technique. Like, this is a lizard scent. This is alive. This is like, you'd go through all your scenarios.
Now you go through all your tricks.
But even then, when it's dragging out months, I won't do it every week because it's like, I feel like I say, when it's less often in there, they're more likely to take the opportunity to feed when they don't have it in their face 24/7 or every day or every.
Well, I know you have a theory too, particularly with the neos, with the newborns, that they might even be afraid of it. And if you're introducing it day after day after day, they're like, what is this thing that keeps coming by? Like, get it out of here. And so you might, like you say, you might even be scaring it. You might even be stressing it. That is one example of where the snake itself is probably getting stressed. But I can promise you, your run-of-the-mill snake that you've had for a while, when it takes a few weeks off of eating, I promise you, it's not worried. It's not concerned. But it's driving you nuts. So take away the stress, wait a week, then wait another week, and it's more likely to eat. You're less likely to waste prey. So, yeah. You're definitely more stressed than your snake. I promise you that, except for those little newbies. Any last words of advice?
Not really. But I would just say this is kind of a big topic, and like it's good for beginners and experienced people. But like, let us know like some of your weird, quirky stuff. What's going on with your animals, or if you need any tips, like we'd be happy to share. So
absolutely, we love questions on YouTube. So please comment.
This is a good one.
Like, subscribe, comment. You know the drill. But we love having good conversations there. I'm going to offer one last piece of advice: husbandry. So it's very common on social media. You go to social media, you say, "Hey, my snake hasn't eaten in a couple of weeks." Of course, you're going to get a lot of husbandry advice, or maybe you've uttered this phrase as part of your post: "My husbandry is spot on."
That's a good.
I will say that if your snake has taken 8 weeks off in the middle of summer, your husbandry is probably not spot on. Well, now, what I mean by spot on is that individual snake may not be happy with something. Now, in the middle of winter, that all goes out the window. It's more than likely just a seasonal break from eating. But in the middle of summer, if your snake is taking 4 to 6 weeks off, your husbandry probably isn't spot on for that one snake. Now, the one piece of advice I'm going to offer is, in the past, we used to always say, well, up your hotspot a couple degrees. My advice these days is the opposite. Lower your hotspot a couple of degrees.
That's a great point.
Too warm is just as bad as too cool. And most of the, particularly colubrid species that we keep in the hobby, the one thing we've learned over the past few decades is we were always keeping them too warm before. A lot of the snakes these days that we used to keep at 85, 87 should probably be at 82 these days. And some of the snakes that we used to keep at 82, they'd probably be really happy at 78 or 80. But when in doubt, try going down before you go up.
75 is not too cold.
It's not.
I came in here the other day. It was 75 degrees, and everybody was just fine.
Yeah, they're all active and they're all ready to eat.
So you could be missing you could be off on temperatures. The snake, well, the book says this, or the advice says this. Try different things, like top rack, bottom of rack. That's a couple degrees. One thing I used to do when I was partner with Guy vs. Lewis, we started this together, MB Reptiles, and we were beginners, and we would get stressed when snakes wouldn't eat. What Guy and I would do, here, you take these 2 snakes, and I'll take these 2 snakes. They won't eat for me. And almost every time, those snakes would switch a location and they'd eat right away. And it's something, maybe it's humidity. Maybe it's like one's in a basement. It gets that cool, there's so many little factors.
There's little variables.
And so.
But just remember, snakes are individuals. And, if you have 5 of the same species and you've got one taking a break, it's to say my husbandry's on point. Well, maybe not for that individual snake. And there's a reason that one snake is behaving in ways the others are. So start experimenting. And the easiest way to do that is temperature. But my advice these days, go down a couple of degrees on the hot spot before you go up. We used to always advise go up, go down.
What about turning off a hot spot?
Yeah, or turn it off. Exactly. If your room is already 75 degrees, you probably don't need a hot spot. So yeah, that's a great point.
Or 82 or whatever it may be, but
positioning, you mentioned it, but positioning in the room, take measurements in your snake room. It's going to be 2, 3, even 4 degrees higher up near the ceiling than down near the floor. And just sometimes swapping snakes places.
Turn off heat. Yep. Swapping.
Or turn off the heat for a
Turn
week.
off heat. Put a moisture hide in there. There's so many little things you can do. I've had snakes not eat until they put a hide in there because they weren't comfortable. They weren't secure in their environment.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, an extra hide. And you just never know. But just know that winter, it's probably seasonal. Summer, probably there's an issue. But not always.
Not always.
Sometimes they just do what they want to do.
Sometimes they go off feed in the hot of the summer.
I have one last question for you because I thought this was really interesting. I was having a conversation online with someone the other day, and we were wondering if you were able to account for seasonal, brumating, not brumating, are captive snakes really at the end of the day eating any more than the wild ones? And my guess is that probably they are, particularly hobbyist snakes like mine that typically don't brumate. Yes, I would say over the course of the year they're eating more meals. I'm talking the number of meals. But if you took your collection that do brumate and you took a wild snake, I would bet you that even with the wild snakes kind of feast and famine and looking for meals and not always finding them, and the snake behavior in captivity where they take a week off here and 2 weeks there, it all kind of, I think, evens out.
Yeah.
And so we always worry that, my snake's not eating enough. But you know what? The wild snakes aren't eating every week either. And I'll bet you it tends to even out a little bit.
You get a hot, dry spell in the summer where there's just wildlife's just hunkered down. That snake might not eat for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
Just because of the opportunities aren't there.
And that's no different than our non-brumating snakes that take 6 weeks off in the winter, or only eat every other or third week in the winter, or whatever it might be. I'll bet you it tends to kind of even out a little bit. I think our captive snakes are eating a little more than the wild, but I'll bet you it's not as radical as we think.
Yeah, I mean, because in the wild, they could be taking such small prey items it doesn't even it's morsels to them.
But they can also gorge. They can eat the equivalent of 3 meals at once. Yeah. So just know our snakes aren't going to starve themselves unless there's truly a health problem.
Yeah. Snakes can go months without food.
Yes.
And warm temperatures.
Yep. All right. Like, subscribe, comment, give us your crazy theories about why snakes do or don't eat. Give us your tips for what you've done to get a snake eating. Tell us about your experiences with varied prey items, and tell us about the weird ones where your snake will only eat female mice if they're white. Tell us about all that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.